everyone. Thanks for joining us. We have two terrific poets with us today, Melissa Studdard and Lois P. Jones. Melissa will read first, and then Lois. Melissa Studdard, her most recent book is the poetry collection, Dear Selection Poetry, Jack Leg Press. Her work has been featured by PBS, NPR, the New York Times, The Guardian, Ms. Magazine, and has garnered awards such as the Lucille Medwick Memorial Award from the Poetry Society of America and the Paris Review Poetry Prize. As a librettist, lyricist, she has had works commissioned by Aspen Music Festival, Wolf Trap, among others. She co-hosts the YouTube poetry series, Poems You Need. Here's a marvelous poet, Melissa Studdard.
Thank you, Harry. That was an absolutely beautiful intro. And I'm so grateful to you and Jennifer and Lois for having me here and being here with me tonight. I do want to apologize in advance that I may be looking a little off kilter, but I'm actually looking at the screen. It's just because I'm using an external monitor. So I'm going to read a combination of poems from the book that you mentioned, Dear Selection Committee, and also newer poems and poems that have not been collected in a book yet. So I'm going to start with a very new poem. And I want to say before I start that I'm also just so excited to read with Lois, who's one of my favorite poets. So can't wait to hear what she has to say after me. So the first poem I want to read is about something political, because I feel like it's all on our minds right now. And that'll be my only political poem. And then I'll move on to poems that are more about life and fun things, and sad things, all of it. So the first one is called Inauguration Blues. Now the sky is tattooed with birds beneath her shirt of clouds, and she is unbuttoning her icy scrim and sharp winds. I drink too much and say things I don't mean, like, don't worry about the dishes, I'll do them in the morning, or I'm sure things will be better tomorrow. In every rendition and dimension, the sequel is the same. Another 4 years of trying to understand what's happening inside the small, inadequate space of his reasoning. This is the hurricane the election handed us. And by hurricane, I mean administration. And by administration, I mean pile of shattered advancements. And by pile of shattered advancements, I mean democracy with its skull cracked open. I'm trying to learn to stay connected without letting it destroy me, to listen and to speak, even through this voice that is dusky, this heart that is overcast and shadowy, like the mist is sitting low in my chest, like there are sunsets in my throat. So the second poem I'm going to read is about the awkwardness of being an artist. I don't know about others, but when I was younger, I didn't grow up in a particularly artistic community. It valued more football and other kinds of things. So I always felt a little bit like an outsider. So this is a little bit about that. It's called Inside the Beige Brick House, the Beige Rooms. And the first line is also the title. Inside the beige brick house, the beige rooms and beige shirted people sit beautiful as unbuttered biscuits, their awful loveliness upon me. They want me drier than wheat, and so still no marbles can roll from my head. I want summer flashing the yard red with begonias. I want ladder-backed woodpeckers knocking at the gables, and crepe myrtle blossoms blown down like hot pink cotton in a storm. I'm embarrassing like that, a walking faux pas no one wants to be seen with at the mall. I know compassion like the arms of a cactus. I know the scent of earth revealing her secrets after a much-needed rain. I buried everything they told me to bury. Then I dug it up again. The next poem is sort of a silly, fun, imaginative poem that's a series of sort of poems dealing with religion in a humorous way. So it's called I Dreamed Mary, Mother of Jesus. And also the first line is the title once again. I dreamed Mary, Mother of Jesus, led the La Leche League of Houston, Texas. She had the most magnificent breasts, like little molehills that people made a mountain out of. When I asked her advice for rearing a child, she said, "Don't tell them they're not immortal. If they find out, they'll die." Her brain was bigger than 1,000 books and so powerful it could beat the internet at chess. I told her all my problems. I asked her all my questions. She said, "The distance around heartache is shorter than you would think." When her son was old enough to speak, he said her milk was better than cookies and cream ice cream or melted M&Ms. And who could doubt it when at her breast, eternity popped open like a broken bra strap? Who could doubt the palate of a baby in training to turn water into wine? So I think I'll continue on with babies for a minute. The next poem is called The Pain is So Resplendent. It has babies. And this is about when I broke my ribs. And I had been taking belly dancing classes and absolutely was loving it. And then I broke my ribs in a car accident. And so it's not very easy to belly dance with broken ribs, needless to say. And eventually I started feeling like maybe I felt well enough to try belly dancing again. And I did, and I wasn't quite ready yet, and it hurt a lot. So the pain is so resplendent, it has babies. And its babies are so resplendent, they have babies. Underage, unwed babies having babies. Someone has built their delivery room in my ribs, and without restraint, they come and go, carrying babies that will birth more babies in the parking lot before realizing they are babies. Flamboyant babies, refusing the swaddle of pink and blue. They leave the hospital in sequined evening gowns to perform the burlesque of pain. And everyone in the audience has their shirts unbuttoned to nurse the babies they carry everywhere. And the speakers, instead of making sound, make babies. And the curtains open and close on a pulley of pain operated by the babies. And when the magician comes on stage, she saws the pain in half, and there are two more pains that saw themselves in half. And now the pain knows how to saw itself in half to make more pain. And there are pain babies everywhere. And there are no rabbits or doves in the hat, just more babies. And when the cocktail waitress comes around, she serves little cups of pain, shots of pain with pain backs on the rocks and pain crudités on leafy green beds of pain. And when I try to leave the show to go home, the MC announces my next set. And I realize it was just me on stage all along, having babies and more babies with no epidurals. I realize it is me who has conceived and mothered and nurtured my pain all along. So the next one is more in a silly spirit. It's called Modus Operandi, and it's from my book, Dear Selection Committee, which is divided into sections that are different parts of like a job application or a letter of application, questions that someone would be asked in an interview. And this poem is in response to the question, how would you describe your managerial style? Modus operandi. I put ranch dressing on the Greek salad. I stand in my front yard in the rain and yell, "I'm the biggest waterfall in this desert." When people invite me to parties, I say no, then show up anyway. I bring my cat dressed in a graphic t-shirt with an image of another, more attractive cat. I tell everyone I've just returned from my honeymoon, and when they ask to see pictures, I show them the cover of the 1855 edition of Leaves of Grass. I like kissing people I don't know, sending flowers to random addresses, and signing the card, "Eternally yours, God." I'm a window cracked in the rain. My name is sitting down and standing back up for no reason. My motto is wings flapping. You should come back into my room if you miss me. I'll be there soon. I'm 1,000 miles away on a different bed. So the next poem I wrote based on an event that happened in, I think it was 2019. There was a subtropical storm in the Atlantic that was shaped like a penis. And it was named Melissa. And my boyfriend sent it to me and said, "You should write a poem about this." I mean, he didn't send me the storm. He sent me a clipping from the newspaper. So my boyfriend's body's covered in newspaper, and the headline says, "Penis-shaped subtropical storm Melissa arouses commentary on Twitter." And I'm like, "I told you." And he's like, "Will you still love me when my shoreline starts eroding?" Life's never dull when your name's Melissa and your mascot is a huge, erect, disembodied penis hovering over the Atlantic, which is to say, abso-fucking-lutely, I'll still love you. What surprises me about the body is resilience. Mine has been a shot glass, a punching bag, a cigarette filter, a lie detector, a crash test dummy. Oh, how it opens and opens anyway when passion comes near. So I reign 7 days and 7 nights inside the penis outline. I whisper the safe word to the ocean in case it's had enough. And when my beloved asks what time I'll be over, I say, I'd travel 1,000 years for one night of this wonder. So I'm going to read a poem that was published a year or two ago in Pacifica Literary Review. It's called "When Will She Ever?" And basically, I have ADD, so sometimes it feels like a big herd of horses running around in my head or something. And this was sort of an attempt to kind of describe it. It's written in third person, as so often poems are about ourselves that we don't want to admit are about ourselves. So when will she ever? And it starts with an epigraph from Gerard Manley Hopkins. "Oh, the mind has mountains, cliffs of fall. Life arranged through appointments, nightfall, small tasks, not ocean mind, not blazon brute or valor, brooding only the pen cap from which the writing instrument comes singing. Where? Small, misplaced, regular object, not a dazzle or dappled, whimsical knot of honeysuckle or wild maple praline syrup, ink not delivered via the mouth of a tulip, a poem, a board game shoot, just a few computations, spreadsheets, eyes dotted, small misplaced grievings. Oh, the mind has mountains she will never climb." I guess that's also a little bit about trying to be creative at times when you're feeling a little blocked. So I'm going to read 2 more poems. And which ones will they be? I think I'll read and sort of answer to the poem I just read. And then I'm going to read one more poem after that. So this is called "Break Your Container of Stars." Break your container of stars, by which I mean break your body over love and art, and turn yourself into a nightlight in God's hallway, by which I mean turn yourself into a buoy in humanity's ocean. 7 years since I swam into the ball of fist and broke my face. The lonely sky animated me into a glitter of fireflies. The crouched and brooding animal beneath them was my own mind. My meditation said, let go of that heavy beast. So I let go until the strange and sleeping puzzle that was me revealed all its pieces. Who knows where they go, as if it mattered. I strive to be a nightlight. I color myself brightly inside the waves. Okay, and the final poem is called In Praise of Darkness. And I wrote this for the hatchling turtles of Manasota Key. I was at a residency there. It's the Hermitage Artist Residency. And I didn't know that the hatchlings were coming out at that time, and that if you turned the light on, that they would get confused and not know where to go. And so there was one night when I left the light on a little too late. And so for penance, and because I felt so guilty, I wrote this poem for the residency to hang or to share with other residents so they would know not to leave the lights on. So it's called In Praise of Darkness, or Why You Should Turn Off the Lights. The turtles mistake our lamplight for a slice of moon, the way a human child thinks the sun is a lemon lollipop dropping from the hand of the great bank teller in the sky. And I can't tell you why what's scoop-shelled and strong-nailed is also so delicate beneath the armor, or why it is we so often bend to meet the systems of our own destruction. It's like a circle boxed into a square and circled again. On one end of the planet, an amorous 190-year-old tortoise named Jonathan mates with his two favorite lovers, Emma and Fred. And at the other end, loggerhead hatchlings can't tell the difference between light and light, as their bodies cling, codified but confused, to the cycles of a burning world. I've heard it said it's turtles all the way down, an unspooling thread of flipper and tail, salt and jaw. That's why every poet eventually drinks enough wine to drown in a moon some careless god dropped into a sea. Poets know darkness is the place we all go to be beautiful. They know, come nightfall, that artificial orb, the lamp, must be hidden, fastened back into its origin, the human mind.
Thank you, Melissa, for such a loving, nurturing, imaginative, luminous reading. I know you talked about how many poems are really about the poet herself, and there is an inner beauty that shines forth in your poetry. And you have such clarity, and your narrative is just so, as I said, smooth and soothing. So thank you for such a wonderful reading. A couple of questions. When did you write your first poem?
Oh, wow. Gosh, I think I wrote my first poem in grade school, but then, of course, I didn't write for a very long time after that. But I was so proud of it because my teacher said it was the best poem in the class and read it to the class. And but I always loved language. And I think way before I really started writing for real, I was always writing in my head. I just didn't know that's what I was doing.
Well, what is it about the poetry form that attracts you to it?
Oh my gosh. That's a really great question because I actually did start with fiction before I started with poetry. And I do love fiction, but poetry is my true great love. And I believe that poetry does things that other forms can't do, because of the way it is, the sonic patterns of it, and the rhythms of it, and the way the language becomes metaphorical and figurative. Those things combined, I think, have a way of just entering the body and settling into the heart and the mind and the bones and the blood in ways that other kinds of writing just can't do.
I agree. And could you just tell us how you write a poem? What is it that kicks off a poem, an idea, an emotion, an image? Like take your last poem that you read. It reminded me, Melville used to, a couple of his lines, make my dark poem light and light. And that was a phrase that Hart Crane used to keep up above his writing desk. But how do you walk us through one of your poems, how it begins and how you write it? Do you write it all the way through? Do you rewrite?
Yeah, that's such a fantastic question. And I have to say that, coming to the blank page is like reinventing the wheel every single time I come to it. It feels like, because I don't have just one process, but I do have a few different processes that work well for me. The one thing that I will say that's very definite is that it's very hard for me to write a poem starting from an idea. That's the hardest place for me to start. And that's the rarest place for me to start, which is actually where I did start with that final poem that you mentioned. And it took me a lot longer to write than it normally takes me to write a poem, because what really gets me going is the way something sounds, or just a dazzling image or metaphor or an interesting phrase will just jumpstart me into, really, I would just call it riffing, almost like a jazz musician. I just start playing with it. And sometimes that I can write a poem that I love and keep in 15 minutes. Sometimes it takes me 16 years to write a poem, which is something that happened when I was trying to write a poem about when my daughter was born. It took me forever to figure out how to really say what I wanted to say. But the poem that I wrote in 15 minutes and the poem that I wrote in 16 years, I hold equally as relevant to me, and I think equally crafted. It's just, I think what happens sometimes is that all the things that a person writes that don't end up culminating in anything, that end up getting thrown out, become practice for those things that just pop out easily later. So like if I write a poem quickly, it's because I had 3 failed poems before it that taught me how to write that poem. So, but as far as my process, I do a combination of writing at the computer and by hand. So I'm constantly like going over to the page and scribbling, almost like somebody would keep scratch paper in a math test, and just playing around on the page, because it doesn't feel so set in stone there. And then I can bring it back to the computer when I'm ready. So I think that's probably the most important thing about my process.
Now, where were you born and where were you raised? And then where were you educated?
Yeah, so I was born in Alabama, but we left there by the time I was a year old, like right before I turned a year old. And then I grew up in Texas, near Houston, in a suburb. And then I went to the University of Houston and then grad school at Sarah Lawrence in New York.
And what's a day like for you in terms of poetry? I mean, you said you're traveling around right now, and why are you traveling around right now? What are you doing?
Yeah, so there's a lot going on right now. I just got back from Philadelphia, and I'm in Virginia right now. And when I was in Philadelphia, I was working on a project. It was the most wonderful thing. It's libretto that I'm writing about trees and root systems and community and like collective like thoughts and interconnectivity. And so the commissioning organization invited all of the people who are participating in this to come and have this 2-day workshop. And so we had a Native American storyteller. We had the singers who are called A Roomful of Teeth. That's their band name. They're fabulous, and I highly recommend looking them up. We had the composer, just all kinds of people there, just tossing ideas around. We spent 10 hours together one day, and just it's amazing to collaborate in this way with people who are working in different genres, because the cross-pollination for me, unleashes thoughts and ideas that may not have come about otherwise. And so I actually have been really circling around this project, trying to figure out how to step inside. But after these 2 days with all of these wonderful minds in the same room, I walked away knowing exactly how I'm going to let this unfold and where to start.
Well, you're just such a marvelous poet, and you're illuminating. And, the basic things, motherhood, among other things that you talk about in your poetry, and light and darkness. But you're a blessing to us. So thank you, Melissa, for reading some of your poetry and letting us know a little bit about your life. And
thank you so much, too. I mean, I'm so grateful for your just insightful and kind and perceptive words, and just for your generosity as a host. So thank you.
Our honor, and thank you once again, Melissa Studdard. Our next poet is Lois P. Jones. Lois P. Jones won the Alpine Fellowship, which took place in Sweden in 2023. Awards include the Bristol Poetry Prize, the Tiferet Poetry Prize, winning finalist for the Terrain Poetry Contest. Jones' work appears or is forthcoming in the Academy of American Poets and Poem a Day, Poetry Wales, Ms. Lexia Plume, Guernica Editions, Valentine Mitchell of London, and others. Her first collection, Night Ladder, Glass Lyre Press, was a finalist for the Julie Sook Award. Here's a wonderful poet and a friend to all poets, Lois P. Jones.
Thank you, Harry. Oh, it's so wonderful to be here. I'm just delighted to be back again and to be following truly one of my favorite poets, Melissa Studdard, and one of my favorite people in the world. I've had a profound relationship with her from the very beginning. I think it started around 2000 and gosh, I don't know. It seems it's been, where do we, 2025? I think it was 2010 or so that we actually connected through an interview on Tiferet. Anyway, it's been a real journey with her, and I've just had so much joy watching her bloom as a poet and now as a librettist. And here she is with us on your show. Thank you for having us. So I'm going to start with I'm going to start with this. I don't know if you can see it. Can you see it? Poetry Goes to the Movies. This is a fantastic anthology that's just come out through the Beyond Baroque Press. And one of the things I wanted to mention, Harry, I know you're listening in, because I had a chance at the launch to hear you talk about the work, preparing for your role in Silence of the Lambs. And then I had the opportunity to read the piece. There was a piece on YouTube, actually a comment on YouTube where you talked about the relationship between poetry and film and how poetry teaches you to use space. So when you go on the set, you know what to do. This is an amazing anthology. The reason, not only because of all these people in here, I'm going to name drop a little bit, Kim Andonisio, Tony Barnstone, Michelle Bidding. There are many, many names. Amber Tamblyn is on here. Tim Siebels, Diane Seuss is in here. This just goes on and on. But the fact is that Suzanne sweated this incredible anthology. And I'm going to be mindful of my minutes here, but I want to say what a work of artistry and devotion it has been to be a part of this, because she didn't just put this anthology together in an alphabetical list of movies or names. She made every poem segue into the next. She looked at the mood, the tone, the time, and it's just an exquisite collection. So my poem in this anthology is a little on the long side, so I won't be reading a lot of poems today, but I'll start with this one. And I am actually kind of a bell nerd. I love bells. I love films about bells. And there's a stunning epic film that's called Andrei Rublev, and it was directed by Andrei Tarkovsky. It was his seminal film. And there's a 30-minute scene set in the medieval period in Russia, a 30-minute scene of bell casting at the end of the film. And it's really the main character, whose name is Boriska, is challenged to make this bell. His father has died in a plague. He doesn't really know the secret, or thinks he doesn't know the secret. And the poem is told in different parts, with the names of each part coming from parts of a medieval bell. And sometimes it's from the viewpoint of Boriska, and sometimes it's just the narrator's viewpoint. So this is called Selections from the Bell Scene, inspired by Tarkovsky's Andrei Rublev, Boriska the Bellsmith. And it starts with an epigraph by Joseph Fasano. Just be pure, you, a living instrument through which things sing, and the mystery will say what it must. Yoke. Every prince needs a bell for the dawn and the Hail Mary at noon, a bell for the Angelus of the evening, a bell that smells of cathedrals and burnt hay to carry the mystic voice and its bones of belief. So think of what came before the birth of this village's bell, with its secret buried inside a father's corpse, before Boriska's father buried his boy's future, the whole village's future, because he was the only one with the knowledge to build it. Think of how the prince's guard pushed the chest of his horse into the boy's figure, walking toward him as the boy backed into the crowd of villagers who gawked and jeered. Before the prince threatened to execute Boriska and the entire crew if the bell failed to sing. Crown. The guards ask, who can build it? And I tell them, Niccolo dead, Gavrila dead, Kazian dead, and the Tatars took Ivashka away. Stupid Druzhnik, I say, if you want to find death, he's in the fifth hut with his eyes shut. I will build the bell. That bastard father gave me nothing in this life but a bull's head and his hands to find the grail. But I know, if you dig deep enough, you will find your kingdom. I took the years of dung and sand to fire the kiln of my own music. They say I'm only the son of a bell maker, that I'm the false bell broken off from them all. But I watched, I listened, I knew. I built my heart from the blood of the earth, while he lay, father, a hut away, worms spinning their death tale with plague. Mouth. First, you must dig the pit wide enough to hold the soul of the bell. Yes, it's called the soul. It is this first hollow that holds the sound when struck by the clapper, when it's broken out of its silence into the human world. Build the soul with bits of brick and iron string, then slather it with clay. But what clay? This is where the secret is hidden. You will know the clay by tasting the loam. Feel the sand and silt as it marries the clay. Know that every agony is a history saying, listen. Know that a bell is a body that's made of music, that your music exists when you find the right soil. Shoulder. Long shot of a dreamscape washing over a river that splits this land in two. It's a monochrome world from the edge of the hill to the waterlogged road where a man pulls his cart of cabbages. Close-up of a boy who is soaked to the bone. Look at him. He knows earth is not a relic in the fist, but the blood of its toe. Something about the way he kicks off one shoe before he falls forward into the mud, sliding over the lip of the slope and reaches bottom. See how his arms and legs make snow angels in the clay. Rain is a ghost wetness, a heavy bird in his hand. He laughs and squeezes the muck through his fingers, tasting the mud with his whole body. Knowing is the way clay shapes a sound in silence. Lip. There's a creaking in the rope that sounds like desperation, like the sweat of the sea without the sea, hands over fist, hoisting the great bell as it ascends into the tower. There's a man and the clapper, and he's pushing the brass back and forth, and the woman in a white cloak is watching, and Rublev holds his vow of silence in his hands. And the sky and its blanched bread is not giving out any secrets, and still the groaning of the clapper sounds like the cry of rust, until the tongue tastes the metal, from silver melted from the rings of the living, from the stolen platters of young widows, from all candlestick ghosts. Boriska sinks to his knees. Bellow, bellow, bellow. What is it you are most afraid to hear? You want this anthology? So good. Okay, so I'm going to read. Last time I was here on Harry's show with my dear friend, our dear friend, Melissa, and my friend Fiona Bennett. And I read some poems from my current manuscript, which deals with the housekeeper of Rilke, Frida Baumgartner, who lived with Rilke the last 6 years of his life. And they lived in a chateau, a very old chateau, with no running water and no electricity. And you can imagine what it was like to survive in a place like this. So this is for those that don't know, and this is a book I've been working on for about 6 years now, hoping to finish this year. This is based on the memoir of his housekeeper, inspired by, I should say. And the title of this poem is called Winter Asserted Its Right. And that's her line. Toss yourself a rope of snow and welcome a winter more raptor than rhyme. Let its sharp claws rest on the back of your neck, then move closer to the fire. Slip into the echo of barn owls. You hear them most nights as you lie beneath the white duvet. Listen for their deep need in the branches. Let them summon you like the evening bell. Let them empty the twilight of almost and raise the falcon in you. Listen to the stars in their spiked stilettos. Think of snowdrift as the ghost of Isabelle de Chevre. You've heard, but have never seen, folding and unfolding her sheets. Remember the sound of the last storm, its silvered vanishing. You were made for this wheelhouse. I should mention that Isabelle de Chevre was a legend. She was the previous occupant back in the 15th century of the Chateau Musée. And the legend says that she is still haunting the grounds. Her husband was killed, and then 2 suitors battled for her, and they ended up killing each other. So she was quite aggrieved. And Rilke was concerned. He didn't want to be buried there because he didn't want to be hanging around the ghost. So he's buried somewhere else in Rouen. Now, this second one is called Blind Carbon Copy. And I was gifted a set of carbon copies that were owned by Frida. They were given to me by Eva West, who has been the marvelous translator for this project. And she actually got it from Frida, the housekeeper's great niece. So it was a real treasure to hold these in my hands. Blind carbon copy. When I hold your typed sheets in my hands, their paraffin wax and mineral oils awakens your own touch as you rolled the thin letter away from the typewriter's platen. The ribbon loosened, a summer robe in the heat, until the words had time to leave their life on the page. It was enough to translate your tongue and reveal visions of the neglected garden, its overgrown ivy and twin birches guarding the poet's gate. Enough to hold your hands that carried icy buckets of water from the beasts, the glacial rivulet flowing down the mountain to the thirsty roses. Hands that knit the winter fires and stoke the air with wild mushrooms. Fragrance of hands turned purple from plucking grapes. Their skins tinge the wind with an autumn I understand. The last goblet clinks against the china, and I hear the clacking of your beads, feel the pull of lace threads that kept you close to him. I know the silence he held you in, like a vine, dark and growing. This is called Housekeeping, just before Rilke's death. And it has an epigraph from Rilke. To my faithful Frida, grateful for everything she has done out of her purely willing heart to bring silence and order to this winter. In the dream, You were climbing into the attic in search of memories. I kept sending you up the ladder, knowing the floors were paper thin and you could fall through them like a heavy bell in a wasp's nest, releasing your death in a swarm. I was the only woman who could care for you. It's not that I understood your vegetarian appetite or the way you liked your sheets laundered with lavender, but that I walked into that frail house of yours with all the timbers ready to dust, and for all those years, I did not leave. So I'm going to end with a poem that I wrote for Fiona, and it's a ghazal. A ghazal, for those who don't know, it's a form of lyric poetry derived from Persian literature, and it has a repeated word or phrase in the couplet. And this one begins with a line of hers that she sent to me. We were meaning to continue the dialogue, but she was taken away from us last year in August. This is called Of Blue. Through a sheet of glass comes an arc of blue. Our subject, now silence, left its tide mark of blue. What does it mean to rest on a glass mountain? You listen like a mountain, eyes spark of blue. Our faces half in shadow as the great dome opens, Hubble's galaxies roam unseen above an arc of blue. Sometimes the voice is like a horizon. We follow your ship's sails. I whistle into the dark of blue. Your sudden illness of switches and crossings, all of us hammered into this bark of blue. You left us the moon on the River Dee. Loss is one moon glade with a vein mark of blue. What wouldn't we give for an "oh, darling" from you? This harsh world, you left us a birthmark of blue. I learned not to ask why, but when I weakened to know, you said, we are abundant, powder wing, a monarch of blue. Buddha's stone face mirrored in your garden, fingers of delphinium left their thumb marks of blue. Death is a drought. Look, the wildfires grow. Lois, remember she left in you a watermark of blue. Thank you.
Thank you, Lois, for such a beautiful reading. You see so deeply, you see so keenly, and you do it with such full heart. And the clarity is full, and it's also full of heart. And in a way, it sounds of the heart. And you work, in the real world, but it's also from within you, your imagination and the way you deal with literary forms and how you put it together. But I want to ask you a question. I love that film too. I love Tarkovsky, the first poem you read. How did you, he's a poet, obviously a cinema poet. How did you put that together, and how long did it take? And how was it? How often do you write a poem looking at a movie?
I think writing poems about films is extremely challenging, just like writing poems to music is extremely challenging, because you're already writing something that's profoundly there and established. And how do you compare with that? How do you take those images of Tarkovsky, who, as you said, is known as the poet of cinema? His father was a poet, and translate into the deeper and another layer, I should say, of meaning through poetry and through the visual aspect of it. And ever since I saw that scene, I wanted to write about it, years ago, I wanted to write about it. And I even asked a friend of mine who I read, Joseph Fasano, who I had read the epigraph of. I said, will you please write this poem because you can do it. I know you can do it. And then that epigraph was actually his note to me about letting it sing in me, letting that bell, letting that truth sing in me. And I thought, okay, I'm just going to go for it. And then when this call came, obviously, for Poetry Goes to the Movies, I thought, okay, here's my chance to try and push this poem forward. And I sent it to Suzanne. It was in an earlier form. It wasn't as evolved as this. And still, I consider it kind of a work in progress because there's more, scenes I want to add to it. But she really amped it up. She helped me to push the poem further, looking into what, as a composition, cinematically, what scenes would help the reader really understand what's happening and make it more visual and make it, just come together in an arc. And so I have to thank her for that major push. And in fact, I'll say one other thing about it. She watched that bell scene. That is devotion to an anthology. I think she watched it and then loved her for it. And so then we could really discuss the dimensions of that scene together.
Well, your poetry is also very visual. Right. Why don't each one of you say something about what the other person wrote, and start with Lois about Melissa's poetry and or reading, and then when she finishes, Melissa say something about what Melissa's poetry about the way you saw it. Lois?
Well, I've been a fan of Melissa's poetry ever since I read her first poem. She knows what an avid follower I am and supporter of her work. Her poetry speaks to me in places that are not, she reaches to the ineffable, and she does it in ways that are always surprising, astonishing, and rich. She has a huge perspective on life. There's wit and there's intelligence in her work, but it also has this very philosophical and spiritual dimension to it, which adds this incredible width and breadth of depth to her poems. It's not about this one moment. It's about all the lives and all the colors of our lives, and how poetry is embodied, and she expresses it so beautifully.
Thank you, Lois.
Melissa.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you. Likewise, I have been a fan of Lois's poetry ever since I read the very first poem of hers that I ever encountered. And I remember just saying, who is this? And going and looking for more poems and just devouring them. And there are really so many things that make Lois stand out as a poet. As far as I'm concerned, things that I really love. And I would just start by where I think possibly she starts, which is her incredible ability to pay deep attention and to listen and to see. I feel like it's almost like she has sharper sensory perception than other people or something. She just has this way of seeing and hearing and feeling and going deeply into her subject. And I think that brings me to the next thing, which is that she has an incredible empathy and compassion, which you would have to have in order to be able to go in that deeply. Her ability to write about other people and write from other people's perspectives is, to me, just astonishing. So many people write mostly from their own perspective or from their own worldview. And to me, this is really the best of what literature has to offer, is to help us see from perspectives that aren't our own, so that we can all get along better and be better to each other. But beyond that, and technical and craft ability, she's just outstanding, as well as, you know, from hearing her poetry, her ways of describing things, her lyricism, the images that she can paint are beautiful and very visual. And she has a way of comparing things that's almost beyond metaphor. It's a little deeper than metaphor. It's more graceful than your typical metaphor. You don't even realize that you're sliding from one subject to another. All of a sudden, you realize that you're there, and it's been so graceful. You're not quite sure how you got there. So that's what I love about her work, among other things.
I think we need an admiration show. We can just talk about each other's poetry, because I know I could go on and on. Thank you so much for that. Thank you.
Well, you both read such great poetry, and your articulation and eloquence just makes such perfect sense about each other's poetry. You both see so much, and you both have such generous hearts. And so thank you once again for just a superlative poetry reading, Melissa Studdard and Lois P. Jones. And I'm going to make an announcement. Next Tuesday, we have two marvelous poets with us, Kim Adonisio and Elena Corinna Byrne. So this is a fabulous reading, and a real blessing. And here's our wonderful director, Jennifer Clymer.
I just want to say thank you so much. This poetry was wonderful and moving. And each week I say I'm inspired, and then my work gets in the way, and I need to just carve out the time to write. So thank you for continuing to be an inspiration for me. And I can't wait to see your guests next week, Harry. Thank you.